Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you could rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda is hearing of individuals and delegations. The public comment period is for comments, not for question and answer. It is for community members to share their concerns or thoughts with the board. When speaking, please be sure to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and if you are representing an organization, we ask that you identify that organization. We ask that you maintain a respectful demeanor and tone with your comments. Please direct all comments to the board members and not other members in the audience. We are allowing each individual that has submitted a pink card to speak once, and ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for others in attendance this evening. We also ask that you do not identify individual staff members or students by name for critical comment. Direct these matters to the superintendent outside of this meeting during school business hours. In the interest of civility and respect of different points of view, please do not applaud or boo speakers. The board will listen to all public comment, but it should not be expected that the board will respond. The superintendent may respond, or we will request individuals to submit questions in writing so that you can get back to you at a later time. We do have one pink card this evening. Mr. Danny Miller would like to speak about Bloomingdale homecoming cleanup. Mr. Miller, homecoming cleanup. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. My name is Danny Miller. I live just down the street on the corner of Akron on 32 Bloomingdale, and I just wanted to start by saying I moved here about 12 years ago, and the thing I love about this town and that I've come to grow to really love about it is just how much the community rallies around the school. You feel that from people of all generations. You see it in the commitment that people have in town and the businesses and in the spirit of the town. And I think it's, of all the places I've lived, I don't think I've ever felt so much spirit gather around a school like there is here. I work in the Buffalo schools, and if we could have just a percentage of the parent involvement and community commitment to our schools in Buffalo, I'm sure we would be competing at the level academically, sports-wise, and in a lot of different areas in Buffalo if we had what we had here in Akron. That being said, I'm looking up here at the video footage of homecoming, which was amazing to watch from my front porch. Over the years, I've been so lucky to see it unfold, and I've heard accounts from my daughter, who took many of those pictures, just how much fun the school makes homecoming. And just you feel it. You hear it coming from the football field. You see it in the parade. It's an amazing event. And it really speaks to that spirit that I feel here. The one thing I feel that's missing with it, one component with homecoming was that we on Bloomingdale were left with a large cleanup, and it happened twice. This year, it happened twice last year, and nobody is upset about it. Everybody feels like, okay, it's just part of what we do. We go out, we rake out the toilet paper, we wait, February, a few rolls fall out of the trees. It's great. Sometimes the kids come by and they throw the toilet paper around on their walk home from school, and it's never really a big deal to any of us on the street. A few people, I think, maybe groan and grumble a little bit about it, but it's all in the spirit of what you see on the video there, of just the love of this town. And as a speech language pathologist who works with kids who are on the autism spectrum, one of the things that I know is really important for their learning and their social development is modeling. And so much of the learning that my students do in my classroom and when I push into classrooms comes from me modeling for them what's expected when you get along with someone else, when you interact with another person. And I feel like what was missing with the homecoming was that kind of modeling with our students, that we have this big celebration, we have this big event that the community rallies behind and supports you with and cheers you on for, and there's a little bit of reciprocity that's missing there with the students in terms of giving a little bit back to the community and saying thank you, saying, hey, we really appreciate you giving us the street, we appreciate the use of your trees, we appreciate your applause and all of your support. and here's what we're willing to give back. And what I propose is not a complaint. I propose an idea. And my idea is the day after homecoming to have a community cleanup. I know that there was talk about doing it during school hours, but you know, it's hard to ask teachers and students to find time to do that. And I felt like the day after homecoming would be perfect. You'd have a lot of community members already at home who'd be willing to come out, maybe help with the cleanup effort. And I think it would really help to not only beautify the town, but it really would help to model for the students how to show gratitude and how to show appreciation and how to show like, okay, you gave us this big celebration and now we're giving back to you a little something as well. And I feel like that is a really powerful a thing that we as adults could do for our young people, is to give them a sense of civic responsibility and not just feeling either entitled or that you know, this is going to happen and you know, we can walk away from it and leave the people to clean it up. So I just wanted to put that out there as a possibility. You have my name and address. If next year rolls around, I'm willing to be a part of it. I've worked with Ms. Kaya on the PTO a few years back, and I'm absolutely willing to help out in any way I can to organize something like this, but I feel like it would be such an important thing to model for our young people. And maybe they can use it for their community service hours, but I just feel like for a community, it would be a great way to support one another and show that how much we appreciate and we still rally behind each other even when homecoming's over. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, your thoughts, and your suggestion.
Mr. Miller, if I can just comment briefly. First of all, thank you for your patience, for your understanding, and really for the kind words you said about the relationship the district has with our community. It's something we certainly strive for. Your reflection is heartfelt, I can see that, and it also is heartfelt, I think, if I speak on behalf of the board. And your recommendation of a community cleanup is an outstanding recommendation. Our kids are genuinely enthusiastic and appreciative of the support they get in our community. I know that your idea would be extremely well received. So it's something I know we can take action on, and you and I can talk more about it. Thank you. Thank
you very much. Item 3, committee reports. Rec Board, Mr. Massey.
We meet tomorrow.
Thank you. ECASB Delegate, Mr. Allen.
No updates.
ECASB Legislative, Mr. Polkowski.
We met on the 22nd. We're discussing a number of different topics. Specifically, the big thing is planning and preparation for the legislative breakfast, which I believe is November 17th. 19th. Okay. In which there's participation from the local legislators to have a round table. The only topic, or during our round table time period, there was one topic that was brought up that is, I feel, relatively pertinent. It is in regards to Lakeshore School District. Shared about this, and this came up at our OACM meeting, was in discussion to electric busing. They are in receipt of their first electric bus. They shared with the team some of the costs associated with it, cost of the bus, half of it paid by a grant, that it had to go through a particular process. Specifically, the route is designated, some of the additional costs associated with electrification, charging terminals, installation of the terminals and running lines and conduits. And then some of the other caveats that are with it. For example, one of them was I think they've had the bus for about 3 to 4 weeks and haven't been able to use it as of yet, primarily because they need to have first responders training. So they were in the process of organizing a first responders training as to how to de-electrify it if there was an accident, how to handle it if there's a fire, how to remove the students, all those sorts of topics which are new. And they were organizing something between Erie County, Cattaraugus, and Chautauqua counties. So something similar would have to happen up here, especially with us being in 4 different counties, our district servicing that. With that being said, one of the things that I think, and this is going to probably become a relatively large talking point, I think, amongst the district and the legislative team, talking to other legislators coming up, since there is such a push for this, is I would like to kind of ask the board for permission to talk to Mark Alexander to get a number of, so we can kind of put some dollars and cents together in regards to how many buses we have. We're only talking about the large buses right now, but we're gonna, if it's total electrification, we have smaller buses. Those costs and things haven't even been talked about. One of the other things Mr. Alexander would be more familiar with is the infrastructure. The bus is way more. There's already talk in regards to the rotary lifts that are used to service the buses, changing tires, service and everything else, you know, so that's a correspondent, but also depending on where you are, certain parts of our district are very rural, and we could have limitations on the actual capacities of bridges and culverts and things that hasn't necessarily been kind of at the forefront of this talk. But I'd like to get some more information together with Mr. Alexander so that essentially we could put together some sort of talking points or leave behind, so that if we're talking with legislators at this legislative breakfast or with others that are interested in coming to the district to speak to either students or you know, the superintendent and board of education, then we at least have some means and methods to help advocate on our behalf as to trying to get everything from funding to just coordination of this whole program as to where it may lie.
It's a great idea. Any concerns from the board, or should we just let Mr. Polkowski contact Mr. Alexander?
I think I can certainly coordinate that with you. I can speak to it now, or in my superintendent report, I can provide some additional information that's connected to that. So it's up to you, Mr. Graham.
If you've got it as part of your report, we'll do it then.
Fair enough.
Budget, ECASB Budget and Finance, Mr. Kenline.
We met last month, and there was some guy that brought up this idea about re-examining the formula that's used to compute the costs of the districts. We figured out that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So the intent is that the cost of the districts will remain the same. One piece of good news is all the districts in Erie County are now back as members of the School Board Association. We had one district that had been out for a while, but everyone is now back. And our next meeting is going to be in December, at which point we'll have the proposed budget for next year. Seems to be moving along very nicely.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Dave Lowry, the Executive Director of ECASB, is here with us tonight. We definitely appreciate the efforts of ECASB, and as you've heard, we're very active in Akron in ECASB and their efforts for our students and the rest of the students of the area. So thank you, Dave. Native American Committee, Mrs. K.A.
Our first meeting is next Wednesday.
Item 4, Superintendent's Report.
Great, so I just want to briefly pick up on Mr. Polkowski's comments, and I appreciate the fact that you're working with legislators to take action to provide greater information and thoughtful consideration of the implications of the fact that that legislation was passed in the governor's budget. So we all saw the budget come out, and we saw, you know, some good news for schools, but often is the case, then there's the finer reading after the fact of, oh wait, we need to start purchasing electric vehicles by 2027 and have full implementation by 2035, and how's that going to happen? Unfortunately, those conversations don't happen prior to the legislation being passed, but yet again, here we are, and such is Albany. Having said that, to give the board some additional information on looking at Mrs. Trotter, because my recollection was almost 3 weeks ago on September 7, I think the week of September 17th, Mrs. Trotter, Mr. Alexander, Ray Francis, our head mechanic, and I met to begin the conversation related to our existing bus purchasing plan and whether or not we wanted to make alterations in our current replacement cycle, knowing what's coming down the road. At this point in time, we certainly have at least another year to continue with the gasoline-powered vehicles before we have to convert to electric. That year of pause is going to allow for some of these potential legislative actions and additional information to be forthcoming. The fact that individual districts are dipping their toe in with one vehicle at a time, great, please do that. We'll share your data with us. But at this point, we think it's in the best interest of our district to continue with our current bus replacement plan, at least for an additional year. Having said that, at that same meeting, I shared an example, because there are a multitude now coming, of EV transition service being done by a major bus carrier in our area. So these bus carriers, these transportation providers, it's a new industry for them. Now they're going to provide a service to districts in which they will help you convert your fleet, your purchasing plan, and if you have your own facility for storage and maintenance and your own, they'll help you with that. It's not just that you get vehicles and enter in an agreement with them. That's one example that we looked at briefly. We are starting to learn, based on Mr. Alexander's information, based on some conferences that Mr. Francis attended, that these purchasing plans, these transition plans, are going to be hosted by a variety of entities. On picking up from our OACM meeting where it came up, we were talking about renovations to our transportation facility. We talked about EVs, as you mentioned. On October 17th, we've arranged a meeting with Greg Royer from CPL regarding an EV bus implementation and planning process to convert to an electrical vehicle system. So again, we're at the information gathering stage, just as the legislators are at a similar stage, but we'll continue to keep the board informed, and I see these two processes working in tandem and parallel. Is there going to be a change to the anticipated implementation timeline? Because you hear that rumor because the power grid isn't up to speed, because the roads may not be up to speed, because of the astronomical price of these vehicles. Where is NYSERDA going to come in? We're hearing from 50 to 75% NYSERDA grants. What are the requirements of those? Some of the early grants that were available were only to qualifying districts, and there were conditions. Akron is not on the list of qualifying districts at this time for this first round. And the thing to note is, I believe the vehicle had to have certain criteria. It had to be older than 2008, and it had to have a certain number of miles logged annually and monthly. Our current vehicles don't fit that description, but we anticipate as these grants come on, they'll make adjustments to those criteria, or at least they could. So there's more to be learned. I wanted to briefly, I keep saying briefly, but we know I'm long-winded, so I wanted to take a long time explaining to you all some changes that are important for our implementation of statewide testing. The New York State Department of Education has indicated very clearly that they're transitioning to computer-based testing for grades 3 through 8 math, science, and ELA. They are rolling it out in a staged or strategic format. There is no required or mandatory CBT in 2022-23, this upcoming spring. However, in 24, a year from this spring, it's required for grades 5 and 8. And you can do it as you've been able to do it for other grades should you choose. The following year, in the spring of 25, it's required for grade 4, 5, 6, and 8. It remains optional for grades 3 and 7. And then finally, on the third phase, it's required for all. The district, in talking to our elementary administrators and our middle school administrators, has decided to continue with the traditional paper-based assessment. However, we plan to prepare for these changes strategically. We have an opportunity to provide our teachers with professional development so that they can become fluent in creating assessments that are computer-based. A lot of our particularly at the elementary level, a lot of our assessments are paper-based. So they can use things like eDoctrina and EdTech to start the process now of preparing their common formative assessments and their benchmark assessments and their unit testing quizzes electronically, so the kids can start to have that practical day-to-day experience in the classroom getting used to CBTs before they have to face it. We don't want them to go into their first state assessment cold. So that's the work that's going on now. I just want to acknowledge our technology department and express my appreciation for this Board of Education for its support of technology. We have an outstanding tech department. We have one-to-one devices that are current, up to speed, and are able to run the operating systems necessary for these assessments and other applications. We are in good shape. One of the reasons why the state is staggering this is to allow districts not only to prepare their students, but to prepare themselves for the one-to-one computing requirements of CBT. Just wanted to add to that, Akron historically, our elementary students have done outstandingly well in the science assessment. Because the state has changed the science standards, there's no grade 4 assessment this year. The assessment will begin, Mr. Kenline, I'm sure you're familiar, will begin next year in grade 5. It's a brand new assessment. A lot of schools do well in the assessment because it hadn't changed for many, many years. We don't know. It's typically a comprehension-based assessment with some performance tasks. We're not really sure what the format of the new assessment will be. And honestly, generally, kids really like taking the science test. It's fun. Science, it's fun, and it's engaging.
And the part of this, Mr. McKay, part of this is because moving it to grade 5, it encompasses all the science that they've taken in an elementary school instead of rolling 1 year of elementary school into the middle school test in grade 8. So it kind of lines up with the way most districts have their schools organized.
In regard to strategic planning, I just wanted to update the board that I want to express my appreciation for Mrs. Kirsten and Mr. Kowalski as well. They have created a working draft of the year 1 strategic planning goals and a timeline, and they've actually broken it down by month for each one of the major goals. What are the anticipated milestones per month? They shared that out at one of our district leader meetings. And I use the term working draft because as we're working on the strategic plan, we're also building, modifying, tweaking our implementation roadmap or this working draft based on our experiences in trying to attain these goals. And sometimes you move faster and slower, and so you modify your implementation. They have begun to work with Mrs. Trutter about how they will account for any potential fiscal implications of the cost associated with some of the goals, so that we're aligning not only the task and how we're going to implement the desired outcome, but also what are the anticipated costs along the way. We'll continue to reflect on that document in addition to the plan moving forward. We did have individual meetings with each building administrator to discuss their building goals and conversations about how at the district level we can support them in implementation. I have to give great credit to our building administrators to the degree which they are already grabbing this work by the horns, taking the necessary proactive steps themselves, beginning to work with their stakeholder and teacher groups on implementation. We had our first communication committee meeting on September 22nd. The next meeting was actually held just yesterday. At that second meeting, the first meeting was discussion around a parent survey on preferred means of communication. The meeting yesterday was an analysis of the results of that survey. We had, I believe, close to 400 responses, a little over that actually, correct, Mr. Kowalski? So great turnout. Interesting data that we discussed as a group. It was clear that people prefer and appreciate receiving the automated text message when something's coming up to know right away. There was some indication that if it's a significant event, they want the text, the robocall, the email, they want it all, but it did stand out that some of those calls, we heard anecdotally in the past, I don't want to be called for every little thing, that's logical, but the text message is nice to know. You can quickly check it out without listening to your voicemail. There was also a lot of discussion about the value of using a single source app for one-way communication updates between classroom teachers and parents. The preferred app is definitely the Remind app, and it's the app that is endorsed and supported by the district. The early conversation among that committee was, let's go forward with this being our single sole source app, so parents don't have to transition between apps with different teachers or at different grade levels. Another conversation that is continuing to go forward is the implementation of our third strategic goal, which is essentially centered around student engagement and achievement. Just updating the board that I shared the good results of our Kagan training and the enthusiasm. Just the anecdotal comments from teachers and kids about how much they like it. We have the key presenter from Kagan is coming to the district on October 24th and 25th to provide coaching supports for all those people who participated in the initial meeting. This individual is going to come right into the classroom. It's not an evaluative thing. It's to say, this is what we're struggling with. Can you model it for me? Can you show it? Can you be a guide on the side? Can you give me some feedback for further implementation? So that work is ongoing. Need some input perhaps from the board on this next item. We discussed the previous meeting about policy 1510 that's available for implementation should the board choose. The board directed me to go back and look at this policy and to just bring to everyone's awareness. This is the policy that under certain extraordinary circumstances, if a board member was unable to attend a board meeting, they could still participate through telecommunication and video conferencing without disclosing their personal location. There are a couple of things with the policy that I just needed, as I started to work on it, I need a little bit of feedback on. First of all, the policy did come with draft or proposed language of defining what an extraordinary circumstance is. And their language is, in the event that you're not able to attend because of a disability, an illness, you have certain caregiving responsibilities. Again, the assumption being there, someone in your family may have contracted COVID or some other illness and you need to care for them. Or any significant or unexpected factor or event which precludes the member's physical attendance. So I don't know the definition of significant or unanticipated because there's another provision in this proposed policy that says you would then be required to give 4 days notice. So when I hear the word unanticipated, I'm thinking something happened the day before and I can't make it, but I still want to attend. But it's unanticipated 4 days out. So first of all, are you comfortable with that definition as a working definition for this group? Secondly, if you wish to participate in a through video conference, the policy would indicate you would tell the board president 4 days in advance, and that seems like a long way out if you get diagnosed with COVID the 2 days before. That would preclude you from attending, so we could modify that to a shorter period.
How does this differ from the way we've been doing it in the past? I mean, when I was out of town for work, I'd be able to, within how many days notice? And then I was able to conference in.
You just had to open your place to the community that
Right,
wanted
is
to
that
join
the
you.
only difference?
The difference is you don't then have to disclose your location.
Right, well, that's my question about the policy, because it doesn't define, and it could affect me at some point here. I mean, making it as easy to do as possible, benefits the district, benefits the board. I don't see the least amount of restrictions is my opinion on it, because if we can get one more member able to be here for the meeting, it doesn't cost you anything, and all it does is benefit. So, shorter time period for notification, the clarification on, does this include being out of town for employment? I don't know who would be out of town for employment, but
I think you have the ability, if you're out of town for employment now.
we
to
do, but,
that.
but disclosing location,
Right.
which I don't really care, but that's.
It's the extraordinary circumstance provision. I think that the language is written intentionally broad to allow districts some latitude.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it. It's on this evening's agenda for a first reading.
Mhm.
We would then move it. We got some feedback from one of our attorneys saying that putting it on our next meeting is too soon. It's not allowing enough opportunity for public comments. So we would have an opportunity for public input, and public hearing, and then add it in November. So October 19th, we could have the public hearing, and then have the second reading in
No,
November.
we can't have it the 19th, it's not enough notice to get it.
It's not
to the
enough.
paper.
I believe it has to be 30 days, correct?
No, but it would only have been 6 days if we went with the 19th, where I'll put it in so it's 2 weeks before.
Okay.
Public hearing would be before the meeting on November 2nd.
Right.
Okay.
I thought we talked about the public hearing being on the 19th.
No,
second.
we can't have
It's
a
too
public
soon.
hearing.
Okay.
And Mrs. Redmond, if we reduce this from 4 days to 2, does that create a burden for you to update the agenda?
The only challenge, I wouldn't want to go less than 2 because I
Right.
need to have technology working with that individual board member to make sure that they have the appropriate Wi-Fi connectivity and so on. So I wouldn't want to go less than 2 for our technology department.
I think we need to define what an extraordinary circumstance is. I mean,
Or if we don't define it, it could be anything to do with it.
yeah, I mean, it could be anything you want it to be, but
So the definition that they have is if you have an unexpected disability, an illness, caregiving, it's that, Mr. Allen, it's or any significant or unexpected factor. That's the language that kind of, I wanted to make sure you're comfortable, so.
Well, who
it has to-
defines that? Does the board president define that then? That's the way I would read it, is like, all right, call up Jim and I have a broken nail and I don't feel I should be here. So, you're gonna define that. Well, it's a big deal.
it is.
Right? So, that's what I'm saying, is that the board president to make the determination as to what is extraordinary and then say yes or no? Because you have to call the board president.
Right.
So, I think that, to me, that's clarification enough. But.
I'd be comfortable with that.
Plus, isn't it already that you have to have, even to do so, you'd have to maintain a quorum of
Correct.
individuals
Yeah,
that
so
are present
there-
in person.
There is more to
So-
this. These were the
Correct.
portions of the policy that drew my attention, that I wanted to make sure I received your input beyond the first, after this first reading.
One of the other requirements is that if you're not at the physical location where the meeting is taking place, you're broadcasting, you have to have your name
Yes.
prominently
Correct.
displayed on the screen as to
Correct.
who you are and why you're there. So, I mean, and I think you're right, Mr. McCabe, that they left it intentionally broad so that, as you said, it gives the school board latitude. So that if, again, Mr. Massey breaks a nail and can't make it in, then, we'll,
Well, I think the only other thing that you might want to consider would be the fact that if it is a matter of being discretionary, then possibly putting in language in which, if it's determined that, if you have a specific individual that is continually utilizing this in a fashion that is not in the best interest or, seem cohesive with what the intent is, then there could be some sort of, something to curtail that. or
Because they're
basically
taking
what it is.
advantage of it, take it away from them.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Because certainly, we want to be here, and it's in the best interest of the community that we're physically here when we can. Yes.
Okay, so I can work on some draft tentative language and share it with the board.
And just thinking of it from the standpoint that, I mean, we're discussing this now, and we're discussing kind of amongst ourselves as being the existing members, but as membership changes,
Right.
this will be a policy that has longevity, so to give it either both the levity to expand upon, but also have some sort of language to curtail it, should it be deemed appropriate, then at least that way you have some teeth within the verbiage to do so.
Yep.
Good point.
So I can work on some draft language in that regard and share it back with the board. And limiting the window to 2 days?
So
But
we'll go back for a first.
it'll have to go back for a first. Mhm.
Next.
Yep.
Okay.
Just kind of moving on, you know, we had Mr. Miller, one of our community members, talk about homecoming week, and I just want to also reflect on this past week. The Spirit Week was just awesome this year, and I think really we haven't had a Spirit Week like this week in quite some time because of various restrictions that we've had to endure. It was just incredible to see our whole school community come together. We really had fun this past week. And I apologize for the cleanup aspect of that fun. But I feel like a lot of things transpired. I felt the sense of family coming back into our schools. I felt the acknowledgement of our history, our legacy coming back. A lot of work was done by our students, a lot of work was done by our parents, and a lot of work was done by our faculty and advisors. And I just really want to acknowledge and thank all of them. One particular aspect of not just homecoming week, but also of our strategic plan is to create a really inclusive and responsive environment for our kids. Part of that works around expanding our children's awareness of the lived and historical experiences of all students, and in particular of our Native American students. I think I've shared with the board, it's interesting when I've interviewed Akron graduates, some of which have applied for positions here, and they talk about that they didn't know so much about some of their classmates, their background, who are from the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, and that they're learning it now as an adult. But we really think that's something that we need to address, and that's embedded in one aspect of our strategic plan. So I was really proud that this first Monday of Spirit Week was just an amazing kind of a bookend experience. On Monday, we had students from Cardinal O'Hara come in to learn about the history of indigenous people in our country, but specifically the indigenous people that attend Akron from the Tonawanda Seneca Nation. And then on Friday, we played some of those kids or their classmates in football in homecoming, and their cheerleaders came, and their cheerleaders were cheering on our cheerleaders, and we built this connection with another school district around our Spirit Week and around our kids. And it was just really awesome. And so that particular day, that Monday, the kids met with one another. They shared stories, they shared dances, they shared food together. Our kids gave their kids a tour. I heard cheerleaders on Friday at the football game saying, "These are our new friends. Like, we love these Cardinal O'Hara cheerleaders." It was amazing. But anyway, I wanted to share with the board just a couple of pictures from Spirit Week to give you a more real sense. So I'll try to do a quick narration. And I know you can see some of the pictures here on the side. These are just some additional ones. So that was everything but a backpack day. So this was the Cardinal O'Hara students. Folk dance, this was also with the Cardinal O'Hara kids. can't remember. So that was Bikers versus Bikers Day. Nation Day, also Nation Day photo. One of my favorite events, the middle schoolers building their boats. Kind of a science project fun. This was the Powder Puff game. See our boys there. Juniors beat the seniors, by the way. Country Day, right? And then Friday was Every Child Matters Day. Up assembly. Court, homecoming court, and of course our parade. We also acknowledged, saw in that last photo there, our Athletic Hall of Fame inductees. Familiar face there. We also had, this week at the elementary level was Fire Prevention Week. We had volunteers from the Akron Fire Department out training our kids. So, I mean, just an incredible week, and I just wanted you to get a sense of some of the great things that I get to enjoy every day, and our kids do too. So, that's it for today.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the business portion of our
Jim,
meeting.
before you
Oh,
move
go ahead,
on.
sure.
Before you move on. On the one policy update that you have for second reading, 8330, that's the one that we had passed and moved back. I'd asked for a 30-day period.
Is it not in there?
You have it in here for a second reading. You changed it to 30 business days. It should just be 30 calendar days. Typically, when those objections come up is during session. Now, I understand that there can be vacations in there and all those things, and I respect that. I don't expect anybody to work on their vacations. But I don't see a reason why, if somebody has a reasonable objection to curriculum or a book or whatever is being used, that can't be resolved within 10 business days. But I was pushing it out to 30. And I think that grants the committee enough time to make that determination regardless if there's a vacation in there or not.
So the thought being on the working days was just those ones that could come prior to the summer months where we may not be able to form a committee because we don't have teachers available. If we got an objection during the summer, at the end of June. Ultimately, it's up to the board, however you'd like it.
Other thoughts?
I'm comfortable with the 30 working days. And again, because of the different schedules that we have, we're talking a nominal difference in amount of time. And I don't think it's...
I'm sorry, you're pushing it back out to between 40 and 60 days. Which is
And
where...
again, if there's no one here, I mean, I'd rather us take the time to get it done and get it done right than just arbitrarily say, okay, we got to have it done in this amount of time, and then rush something through. If we can't get the people that are necessary, because we have this, we set this arbitrary 30-day deadline. Again, that's personal opinion.
Other thoughts? We have two opinions on that.
I'm good with it.
I'm fine with 30 working days as well.
I'm with 30 working days. So how does that work if you get a complaint in June then?
Well, again, the nature
So it wouldn't.
of the
it
work
wouldn't
is to
be-
form a multidisciplinary committee, knowing that people have vacation days, that from the initiation of the complaint, the 30 working days would be the last, from wherever the last day of teacher attendance, then it would resume again back on the first day of teacher attendance, so in September.
What's our current cost of buses?
Cost?
Yeah, I know we just did a bond, I don't remember what the exact cost was per bus.
Kind of looking at Mrs. Treader, it was at a.
120 per bus. And the state is looking at us going to an all-electric fleet within
2035.
2035. Right now, those vehicle costs are between $300,000 and $450,000.
That's about the range I've heard.
They're gonna go up. They're not gonna come down. So I don't see how any district can sustain that cost, even with grants, if they're paying 50%. I don't know how any district is gonna be able to financially be sustainable at that point. Not to mention the additional costs like Mr. Polkowski was talking about with running lines and conduits and retrofitting the bus garage to hold more weight. I don't know how we're gonna do that. And I just wanted to kind of say a piece on that. The testing procedures going to computer. Has that been tested throughout the state?
I believe CPT, Andrew, I'm kind of looking, you came on board in 2015 or 2017? So I think 2017 is accurate. So computer-based testing has been an option since 2017. It's my understanding that Akron attempted CBT 1 year and was not satisfied. A number of districts were not satisfied with CBT and reverted back to paper-based. There are districts that do computer-based testing across the state, including locally.
What's the associated cost with that? What's that going to?
I mean, I suppose some could argue, and I wouldn't know the dollar value, some could argue that, you know, the printing of testing materials and the processing of all of that materials may come at additional expense as opposed to an electronic, but unquestionably, you have to be able to purchase, maintain, and keep upgraded appropriate devices in order to do CPT testing. Now, this district has been one-to-one computing for a number of years. We have an ongoing replacement plan using our Smart Schools Bond Act money to keep that, and recently we used federal dollars, but absolutely it comes at a cost. But I couldn't tell you the dollar amount, honestly, to know how much administration. I will tell you that there's associated costs with scoring. Typically, paper-based scoring, you have to get a team of teachers. They need release time, so you're bringing in subs and training. We take the multiple choice answers, and those get just scanned electronically on the paper-based. There's not a lot of cost, but the extended response, the written response, those all have to be scored by teams of teachers. So there's definitely a cost associated with substitutes, or in our case, we didn't have substitutes. We kept teachers after school, so they earned comp time for that on some occasions, not all. Or the other cost that you won't necessarily see from a monetary is loss of instruction. There is, in some occasions, you know, you're taking some time for the assessment. Now, granted, the assessments have been reduced dramatically from 3 days down to 2, and they're shorter in duration. But if you're pulling teachers to do scoring, you know, there's a loss there too.
mentioned in regards to your concerns in regards to EV busing. It is a concern. I think that's part of the reason I'm trying to get some additional data from our transportation department, because obviously our transportation department, we're in a little bit of a different scenario. A lot of districts use third-party services. We have our own in-house staff and service. With that in mind, one of the things is part of the reason for trying to get this data and trying to have a little bit more of a cheat sheet per se, or leave behind with legislators, is between the legislative breakfast and just the amount of time that was allocated to speaking specifically about EV busing, the costs that were associated with it. I think every district, at least that was at the legislative meeting, was generally concerned about all these hidden fees, hidden costs associated with it, long-term longevity. One of the other estimates was, as you indicated, in regards to pricing, the bus turnaround, the availability, let alone anything else, is 13 to 18 months from the time that you purchase it. So that even becomes another factor. But part of that is what the intent is the legislative team every year will go through and assess what some of the hot points are. They will take 3 topics in particular over the last 2 years. The priority topic was in regards to COVID regulations, some of the mandates that were there, vaccinations, and how that plays into things. This year I could very well see that the possibility of meeting with legislators and having these conversations in regards to EV busing could take a precedent and be on those tickets. So the idea is to meet with them and see about extending them, or just to, again, as Mr. McCabe indicated, try to bring to light a little bit more some of the nuance that has been associated with it. So it's not just going forward, but it is something that's there. And with that in mind, as we do reach out to our legislators, I've already had a conversation with Senator Rath's office. He has been out here last year to speak to students and then to speak with our board, or with Mr. McCabe and Mr. Grant. He's already entertained an action to come out and speak with him speak to us in the next couple of weeks if we set up the right thing. So likewise, those are the sorts of topics that we'd like to have and be able to present to them so that we can kind of curtail it or address it to see if there's some sort of other alternatives that can be kind of integrated as opposed to just go with a full rollout. So that's kind of the topic in mind.
Anything else? Thank you. Item 5, personnel instructional. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve instructional items consent 5A to 5D.
Moved.
Move Mr. Massey, second Mrs. K.A. Questions or comments on those items? Motion carried. Item 6, personnel non-instructional. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve non-instructional items consent 6A to 6G.
Moved.
Moved, Mr. Massey.
Second.
Second, Mrs. K.A. Questions or comments? Motion carried. Item 7, district items. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve district items consent 7A to 7G.
Moved.
Moved, Mr. Kenline.
Second.
Second, Mr. Polkowski. Questions or comments?
Have we received any applicants?
For the Director of Athletics, Health, PE, Safety and Wellness, yes. 5 applicants were received. Interviews were held by the selection committee today. I received a recommendation for 2 to move forward. I'll be interviewing those applicants on Friday.
Motion carried. Item 8, special education. Our recommendation is that the Akron Central School Board of Education approve the classifications and placements as per the list received as recommended by the Committee on Special Education. These recommendations are for the least restrictive environment at this time.
Move.
Moved, Mrs. K.A.
Second.
Second, Mr. Kenline. Questions or comments? Motion carried. Item 9, school board correspondence. Tomorrow, the student leadership dinner is being held at the Columns Banquet Facility in Elma from 6 to 8:30. Speaking with Mr. Lowry before our meeting tonight, the attendance at this meeting is so large, or this gathering has been so great, they've had to move it to the Columns from ECASD, which is a really good indication. Thursday, October 13th, Dr. Rick Timms, all about state aid at the Creekside Banquet Facility in Cheektowaga, 6 to 8:30. Again, that's an event that's outgrown ECASB's facility. Mr. Timms is a great speaker. Hopefully we have people from the board attending. Good. Thursday, October 20th, the legislative team is meeting from 6:30 to 8:30. October 27th to the 29th is the NISBA 22 convention in Syracuse, New York. We do have people from Akron attending that as well. Saturday, November 19th, as Mr. Polkowski indicated, is the legislative breakfast at the Grapevine Banquet Center from 8 to 11:30. Please see Mrs. Redmond for registration. Item 10, upcoming dates. Monday, October 10th is Indigenous Peoples Day. There is no school. Wednesday, October 19th is our workshop business meeting here in the cafeteria at 7 o'clock. Item 11, board discussion. Anything the board would like to bring up at this time? Okay. Item 12, executive session. We do have a need to go into executive session this evening to discuss negotiations and the employment history of a particular person. If I may have a motion, please.
So moved.
Moved Mr. Kenline, seconded Mr. Allen. Questions or comments about that? Motion carried. We're in executive session at 7:57 this evening. We do not intend to conduct any business coming out of executive session. Thank you everyone for attending this evening.